Hello everyone, it's your boy Jeff, and welcome back to the Spin Zone. Doing a Spin Zone video here for you today. I've got, I think, like 8 or 9 albums here to show, covering roughly the last 2 or 3 weeks worth of listening. So we're going to start right now with Cheap Trick, Heaven Tonight. I just drew a blank when I looked at the cover. Yes, Heaven Tonight. This was another album that my friend Emma sent me as part of a VCLT package. Here's the back. Compared this one to their debut, which I've listened to recently, this one is almost as good. I like the debut a little bit better, just because it had a little more of a raw, energetic sound to it. But this album is very good too, and of course it contains one of the great singles, one of the great power pop singles of the 70s, and that's Surrender. So, very glad to have some Cheap Trick in my collection, so thank you for that, Emma. This is a great listen. And this was basically a new, aside from Surrender, this was like a new listen for me. I don't think I recognized any other song besides that one on here. So I was very glad to get some more exposure to Cheap Trick, especially their early stuff. So thank you for that. This was a great listen. Another album that was a VCLT is The Man Upstairs by Robin Hitchcock, which was given to me by Anthony Ferraro, who just out of the blue said, "Hey, I'm sending you something," and a couple days later this showed up on my doorstep. So this was Robin Hitchcock's album from 2014, and it's got some originals. It's about half original compositions and half covers. So he covers songs like The Ghost in You, which I really, really enjoyed. He covers The Crystal Ship by The Doors, which is actually one of my favorite deep cut Doors songs. So it was very nice to hear his version of that. This is mostly an acoustic album. You know, there's very minimal accompaniment, and it's just Robin singing. So I didn't even know this was available on vinyl until I opened the box. And yeah, this was a great surprise. So thank you, Anthony. You're the man. And you can't go wrong with Robin Hitchcock in my book. So very glad to add this to my collection. And then another album that I was glad to add to my collection was by Canned Heat, and this is called Live in the Blues. This is their double album. This was one of the ones that I bought in a record store in McHenry, Illinois. Unfortunately, as you can see, the cover is beat up. You know, it's got pieces missing. One of the top seam is split. Visually, the records looked good, but they didn't play as good as they looked. Unfortunately, there was a lot of surface noise. There was a lot of crackle. Of course, I only ran this through the spin clean. I didn't really do anything more aggressive to it. The music itself is great. Like I said, it's a double album, and the first disc is basically studio cuts, and Going Up the Country is on this one. Pony Blues, Sandy's Blues, Boogie Music, those are all great songs. I find I'm really enjoying Canned Heat. This is the second album of theirs that I've picked up. And the second disc is from a live show, and it's Refried Boogie, both sides. So you've got part 1 and part 2 on the second side, on the second disc. So that makes for a pretty long ass song. Probably not something I'll be replaying very often, but I listened to it all the way through once, so that's good enough. I would probably want to upgrade this copy because, like I said, it looks good, but it didn't play as good. So I may try scrubbing bubbles on this. I don't know. Yeah, I would much prefer to find a better condition copy with a nicer cover too. So, but overall, once you get past the surface noise, the music in here is really great. So I really enjoy Canned Heat, and this fit right in with, the whole 50th anniversary celebration of Woodstock because they were a big act there. So very glad to get this one, and maybe someday I'll be able to upgrade it. Then I got listened to Simon and Garfunkel's Greatest Hits one day. This was the day I was cleaning a bunch of 78s, and I wanted to put some music on, but not something that required a ton of my attention. So of course, I have nearly all of Simon and Garfunkel's albums anyway. Got this in a pile of records that my dad gave me, and it's a brand new copy. I almost didn't even need to clean it. It just had a little bit of dust on it. Sounds great. And of course, all the music here is stuff that I'm well familiar with. So, of course, let's see, without any glare, you can see a lot of the song titles there. So yeah, you can't go wrong with Simon and Garfunkel. So this, of course, was a very pleasant listen. Then I played the last Vinyl Me Please record that I bought. This is Knock on Wood by Eddie Floyd. This is the only records that I store with them outside of the sleeve are the Vinyl Me Please ones, just because they put them in these self-sealing flap outer sleeves, which I dislike, and this little cardboard thing always pops out. It's very difficult to get back in one piece without bending it. So I basically take it out once so I can get the record out, and then I store it this way. The way a lot of people do in the BC, I know, but I don't. I don't store them that way. This is a soul classic from 1967, and of course the title track is a soul classic, a Stax classic, of course, Knock on Wood. Well, I can't see all the song titles now because the record's blocking it. But yeah, this is just some classic late 60s Stax soul. Eddie Floyd and of course Booker T and the MGs, I think, were the backing band or members of. I think Steve Cropper was also worked on this album too. And of course, it's a brand new pressing from Vinyl Me Please. It sounded great. So this was one of the albums that I swapped for to take instead of what they were offering as their album of the month. And then I decided to take a break from Vinyl Me Please, but I wanted to make sure to get this one. So this was a good one. Knock on Wood by Eddie Floyd. Then my Genesis listening project continues with Duke. Don't really know what to say too much about this album that hasn't already been said. Of course, Turn It On Again was a big hit for them. Misunderstandings on here, and of course one of my favorites is Behind the Lines, which opens the album. Great song, a great showcase for Phil Collins' drumming, and just a great album. The vinyl on this was really thin. I could wobble this record, I noticed, and the sound quality was good, but I suspect if I had probably something on a little more substantial vinyl, it probably would sound better. Plus, this had a little surface noise too, even though it looked really, really clean. So, that aside, I enjoyed this Genesis album. I think I only have two more to listen to before I've gotten through, I think, almost all the Genesis albums. So, this was just another step in that journey, in that particular journey. And now, one of my favorite new albums of the year, one of my favorite new blues albums of the year, is by Kingfish. I showed this on Facebook, of course, and Instagram. Emma, you need this album. From 8 Vinyl Low. Emma, you need this album. This is a great, great album. Didn't know that it got a vinyl release until just recently, and I think it just happened last month. And Rob over at Black Star Vinyl alerted me to that. So I jumped over to Amazon immediately and ordered a copy. I heard a lot of these songs previously, mostly through Facebook videos, and enjoyed it. But at the time, it was only available on CD, so I held off on buying it. If it truly would have only been available on CD, I probably would have ended up buying it that way. But it came out on vinyl, so I snapped it up like that. This guy gives me hope for the future of the blues too. Chris Stone, Kingfish Ingram, that's his full name. Kingfish is his nickname, obviously, and plays a great guitar. Has a great voice, and who else? Buddy Guy guest stars on one of these tracks. Fresh Out. Yes, that's the one. And who else? There's somebody else that guested on this, but I'm not reading. Oh, Kev Mo gives guest stars on Before I'm Old. That's right. Couple of Chicago stalwarts in the blues scene. But there is hot electric guitar on this album. There's also cool acoustic as well. There's acoustic blues on here too. But this guy's got it. He's got the voice, he's got the guitar playing, he's got it all. So, was very glad to get this album. Really enjoyed it. In fact, it did come with a download card, and I'll be putting this on my iPod too, so I can listen to it when I'm driving. But yeah, if you like modern blues and you think that, nobody working today can really do it anymore, give this album a try. This guy is good. So this is probably my favorite, highest recommended album of this entire stack here today is this one, Kingfish. You got to check this one out. Then another album that I just decided to play just because sometimes, like I said in my post, you got to go with a classic. Back in Black by AC/DC. What can you say about this album, really, at this point? I picked this up at an estate sale. It's not in the best shape, cover or record, but you can, if you turn it up loud enough, which I did, it gets rid of all the surface noise. It's one of those type of records. So maybe someday down the road, I'll be able to upgrade this to a nicer condition copy, but for now, all I did was just crank it up. I had all the windows open when I played this the other night, so all my neighbors could hear it too, and I didn't care. So probably, well, this was their biggest selling album for sure, Back in Black. Probably the best album that Brian Johnson did with the group. It was his first after the death of Bon Scott. Admittedly, I prefer more Bon Scott AC/DC than I do Brian Johnson, but this album is killer from front to back. I mean, there's no skip songs on this album. There's nothing you want to just pass right over to get to the next one. From the first song to the last, it's just great, great stuff. And I gave my speakers a nice workout because I usually don't turn them up that loud, when I'm playing music, but when my wife saw this in the crate, she's like, "Oh, you got to put that one on and you got to turn it up." So I said, "Yes, dear." She knows better. I'll never say no to that. And last but not least, I showed this one a couple of videos back. Blueberry Hill by Fats Domino. I thought this was a greatest hits, but it turns out it is a live album. So, this one actually played pretty well. This is a stereo copy. I think this came out in 1967, 67 or 68. And it sounded pretty good, actually. There was, some noise, but overall it played pretty well. And of course, you hear a lot of his hits, like, of course, Blueberry Hill, Whole Lot of Lovin', Jambalaya, Ain't That a Shame. And these was all live. So I was a little pleasantly surprised by this one because, like I said, at first I thought it was just greatest hits because it doesn't say that it's a live album anywhere on here. And of course, I didn't read all the liner notes, but there you go. Fats Domino is one of the early legends in the early rock and roll years. So always love his stuff. And there you have it. That's what I've been playing here recently. Um, yeah, I haven't had a ton of time to be playing a lot of new music. A lot of stuff's been going on, and just haven't been able to just sit down and listen. That's why it took a lot longer for this one to come out since the last one. But I did get another stack of albums in yesterday, which I cleaned. I have to enter them into Discogs. I'll show them in another video because I don't want to make this video super duper long. So that will be coming in the future. So thank you all for watching. It's your boy Jeff. Peace. And I will see you again soon. So take care.